Hello and welcome to another rousing edition of Trending Topics with BB. I am your humble host, Brooke Brown, and hence the BB. Well, it has been a minute since I released an episode. I've taken a little hiatus due to the craziness that is my life. And plus, I want to give you valuable content and all of that good stuff. But before I get to that, I want to give you some housekeeping, as I like to put it. If you have not logged on to the official website, which is trendingtopicswithbbpodcast.com, please do so. There you will find links to all of the possible places you could find this podcast. Of course, I haven't done a recent search, but most of them ones, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, Player FM, TuneIn, basically wherever you listen to your podcasts. You're currently listening now, but if you want to check that out, also on the website, you will find links to all of the social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So definitely follow there. And also, finally, a link to our merchandise from our wonderful friends at TeePublic. There is a great chance for you to support the podcast by purchasing any merchandise, as the proceeds helps keep this podcast afloat. And I want to say I am recording this in the evening, so you might be hearing crickets. I apologize for that. And I live in Arizona, thus the air conditioning in the background. So I just want to point that out in case that is bothering you for, I guess, future reference. Now, for those that are new to this podcast, I do interview, or as I like to put it, chat with many different people from all walks of life, but I have been on a streak of talking to people within the trance music realm while I am still conjuring up and trying to make schedules work in terms of new episodes concerning new guests in that realm. I'm also will be releasing some new episodes featuring some top talent, and I hope you stay tuned and listen to this podcast. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, I'm going to introduce a new segment on this podcast. This is hopefully going to stick around because of the state of pop culture and entertainment, and I will get to that in a second. But a previous series on this podcast was called My Soapbox. While that'll be returning here and there, I'm not going to continue with that one just yet. I have to build up to find a reason to get on my soapbox. So for those of you out there that enjoy my soapbox, thank you. But without further ado, I want to give you to this is what I call binge what? So we're in a transition. Well, we've been in a transition period, but more often than not, I am one of the millions of other people out there that cut the cord. And what I mean by is I do not pay for cable or satellite TV. Haven't for close to 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't miss it. For a minute there I was missing sports, but I will get into why I'm not anymore. But I honestly don't know how I used to watch cable or satellite TV back in the day, because I am part of what you like to call the binge watchers out there. I watch TV when I can watch TV instead of the other way around. Thus, I want to talk to you about all the possibilities in the abundance of content that is streaming television these days. We have services such as Netflix, which I'm sure you've heard of, Hulu, Amazon Prime. Coming in November, we've got that Disney Plus, which reminds me of why I don't miss sports anymore, is because I'm also subscribed now to ESPN Plus, which is a streaming service for sports, well, through ESPN as it's sounded, and that Great. And I know what you're wondering here. If you haven't cut the cord, or if you have, and you still have all of these separate little apps or services or whatever you want to call it, isn't that just the same as what I previously paid in cable and satellite? No, actually I've saved a shit ton of money, if I'm being candid. And even if I'm going to continue to have to add a new app for certain content, because Warner Brothers just announced they're going to have their own streaming service as well, which is going to take Friends and Office and some of the Warner Brother properties off of the other services and put it on their own network. That's just where we're going, people. Everything's going to be an app and service that you either subscribe to or pay extra for, depending on what you want. But Binge What is my series of what I suggest you binge out there. Basically, I've watched a lot of content and didn't realize I have, and I want to go over it because I talk about this with many people I work with on a daily basis. We all talk about what we're binging, what shows we like, what we don't. So I'm just going to do a little rundown of some stuff that I highly recommend that I've recently watched. Now, I could go down a whole list of stuff such as House of Cards, which no longer is a show, and so forth. Obviously Friends, The Office, stuff that's already been on regular TV that is now bingeable on these streaming services. That is, well established. But recently, I want to talk about, well, I guess I'll start with Netflix. Let's just start with Netflix. So I was unaware, because I did cut the card, that there was a show called Lucifer, which was on Fox at the time, and last year it got canceled after 3 seasons. However, social media and a Save Lucifer campaign on social media saved the show, and Netflix picked it up for a 4th, and now, well, soon they did announce that they're going to do a 5th season, which is going to be the final season. But the beauty of this is that because I was unaware until coworkers mentioned it, until I saw it pop up on Netflix, that I'm so happy, because this show, I've never been so emotionally involved in a show in years. And it's procedural, but it also has a really deep character development story that you get invested in as you watch more and more of the episodes. It has comedy, action, drama, romance. It's amazing. And I'm actually going to be going to LucyCon in a few weeks, because I fell in love with the show, and I've never been to a convention for a TV show in my life. So give it a shot. You may or may not like it, but it's great. Every cast member acts their ass off. The writing's impeccable. The direction's impeccable. The cinematography, you get where I'm going with this. On that note, I want to talk about Queer Eye, which is a reboot of the old show from the late aughts, as I like to call it, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And if you have not watched it, all of the seasons, I highly recommend it. Every episode puts me in tears, but in a good way, because it's such a positive, deep and meaningful show. These makeovers are not just about what's on the outside, they're about what's on the inside of these people. Some of these people are super inspirational, and their stories deserve what the Fab Five has given them, what the show has given them, and it's propelling them onward in their life. So I recommend Queer Eye on Netflix. If you are into stand-up comedy like I am, or I've explained on this podcast by talking to comedians, then you'll love the new series. Well, it's not really new, but it's been adapted into Netflix from another network, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. that is a show that is hosted and produced by Jerry Seinfeld. I highly recommend you check that out as well. So those are I'm gonna just do 3 from each service. There's so much content out there, and you catch my drift. Obviously, we could talk about if we go into more about stand-up comedy, we could talk about all of the specials that are available, all the comedians that have released specials on Netflix. There's so many to go over. Highly recommend. And along those lines, more of a one-man show. Check out 3 Mics by Neil Brennan on Netflix. You'll thank me later. It is such an irreverent, intelligent, comedic, one-man show that may surprise you. Anywho, sorry I got rudely interrupted. A monsoon started here as I was recording. So those are some recommendations for Netflix. In terms of Amazon Prime, if you're a car buff and love British humor, I definitely would check out Grand Tour. If you love a really great drama that talks about stand-up comedy back in the day, check out Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And on Hulu, I just really actually am checking out some great movies on there. If you have not watched the Dr. Ruth story, and today I watched Vice. If you have not seen those are some recommendations. So thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I hope we'll check back in with Binge What?